for your children to be fed. So you're not crying because they're crying and they can't go to bed. You cannot pray for your medical bills to disappear. You cannot pray for the mold to stop poisoning your children in the classrooms. The other thing that frustrates me is people who have experienced poverty, who have gotten the straps for their bootstraps, who sit and talk about how we shouldn't do anything for the next person. See, as someone who knows severe poverty, I lived in a refugee camp, on the floor, no water, nothing. In
an emotional address, Ilhan Omar reflects on the harsh realities of poverty, saying, "You can't pray away hunger or medical bills." Her words resonate deeply with millions who endured similar struggles. Yet, her heartfelt message also stirs controversy. While Omar's story of perseverance continues to inspire, critics claim she often uses her personal hardships to deflect from her own contentious record in Congress. This video explores the heated fallout surrounding Congressman Chip Roy's response to Omar's removal from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, a move that's reignited fierce debate in Washington. For years, Omar's remarks on global and domestic issues have drawn accusations of harming America's standing abroad. Now, Republican leaders like Roy insist this decision isn't about race or religion. It's about accountability and safeguarding the nation's integrity.
Chairman, I do associate myself with the remarks of the gentleman from Kentucky, but also the gentleman from South Carolina, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, the gentlelady, all the remarks that we've been talking about over here. And I appreciate the spirit of the remarks from the gentleman from Colorado. Would note that we're here for a very obvious reason. The door was opened, and now we're dealing with that. And the door shouldn't have been open. I'm reminded when I was in the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2005, and Miguel Estrada was being filibustered by the Democrat majority at the time. And we know why. We know this because a memo that said very specifically that he was being filibustered because he was an Hispanic conservative was found, but then shoved aside. We couldn't talk about it because it was found on a server, and said, we shouldn't get it. There's a whole lot of backstory on that. But there was a lot of drama around that. There were 7 judges being held up: Priscilla Owen, Janice Rogers Brown, because she's black. That was all happening. We just sweep that aside. And you fast forward, and Bill Frist was being pressured to deploy the nuclear option. I remember being part of all those conversations, the Senate lawyer in the Judiciary Committee. Bill Frist decided not to deploy the nuclear option. In 2013, Harry Reid did.
When Congressman Chip Roy took the floor, his message was firm and unapologetic. This was about fairness and consistency. He reminded the chamber that Democrats were the ones who first set this precedent when they removed Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar from their committee positions in the previous term. Now, Roy argued, Republicans are simply responding in kind. He made it clear that this wasn't the route he wanted to take. But as he put it, we're not going to unilaterally disarm. In politics, when one side changes the rules, the other side eventually pushes back. And that's exactly what's happening here. Till drive his point home. Roy drew a vivid analogy. The infamous baseball clash between Nolan Ryan and Robin Ventura, where one player took the hit but finally fought back. The message was unmistakable. Republicans are done taking punches without swinging back. This moment captured the raw tension in Congress. It's no longer about retreat or restraint. It's about standing your ground, even if it means taking a few hits along the way. Roy's words made one thing crystal clear. The era of one-sided politics is coming to an end.
So now we live in that world. It is what it is. Now here we sit. The door was open. I just went back and reread my speech on the floor because the gentleman, I hadn't done that yet. I went back and reread my speech on the floor. Not stand by every word of that speech. And in it, I referenced the fact that I just a few months prior had been in agreement with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle with respect to January 6th, which there's disagreements on our side of the aisle on some of that with respect to the votes at the time, and that I'd taken very strong disagreement and sought apology from our colleague on our side of the aisle about some of the remarks that were said, but felt that this was not the right path to go down. I stand by that. So here we sit. I could associate myself and do with all the remarks that gentleman from South Carolina. I have very strong disagreement with a lot of the statements that Representative Omar has made. We've covered most of them. That some people did something is the one that really sticks in my craw pretty strongly. Raises a whole lot of flags for me. I think there are significant amount of justifications to raise issues with respect to service on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but I would not go down this road. But I'm also reminded, August of 1993, Juan Gonzalez was a batter for the Texas Rangers and was plunked by Alex Fernandez.
Roy didn't mince words when addressing Ilhan Omar's past remarks, particularly her infamous comment referring to 9/11 as when some people did something. For millions of Americans, that statement wasn't just insensitive. It felt like a dismissal of a national tragedy that changed the course of history. To Roy and many others, it wasn't about poor phrasing. It was about perspective and respect. That single moment, he argued, reshaped public trust and raised serious questions about whether Omar should speak for America on the global stage. Roy framed the issue around accountability, not retribution. Accountability isn't punishment. It's protection, he emphasized. Protecting the integrity of Congress, the nation's reputation, and the values it stands for. The video's commentary highlights that this moment transcends party politics. It's about challenging the establishment and demanding higher standards from those in power. For too long, conservative voices have been brushed aside or mocked for speaking uncomfortable truths. But now, platforms like this are pushing back, exposing double standards, defending free speech, and standing up for patriotic principles that Omar's removal, the video argues, isn't about silencing opposition. It's about ensuring that those who represent America do so with honor, integrity, and respect for the nation's core values.
Robin knew what was about to happen. Nolan plunked him. And then Robin Ventura charged the mound, and then Nolan Ryan beat the crud out of him on the mound. That's what happened. We all know that's what happened. Old school baseball. Nolan Ryan defined old school baseball. This is raw politics. That's what this is. When the doors opened, then there's a question, and you have to decide what you're going to do. We're not going to unilaterally disarm. Just not going to do it. I'm tired of that. It just is what it is. Guys took a shot at someone on our team, about statements I disagreed with and took very much to task. But I've got strong disagreements with Representative Omar. I would prefer, if it were just starting from scratch, I would not choose this path. I'd just say whatever stuff you all want to say. We'll say whatever stuff we want to say. Our manager pick our team. Let's go battle it out in committee. That's what I would say. I would say that's the right place to be. But at this point in time, it is my considered judgment that, like Nolan Ryan, we've got to respond. And I'm just going to be blunt and honest about it. That's just my belief. I think it's important. And I hope we'll get through this.
Ilhan Omar's record has been a lightning rod for controversy since she entered Congress. Critics point to her comments that they say minimize terrorism, alienate key allies like Israel, and even appear sympathetic toward America's adversaries. Her now infamous "some people did something remark about 9/11" struck many as callous and dismissive, and her repeated questioning of long-standing U.S. alliances has fueled doubts about where her loyalties truly stand in the world of foreign affairs. Words carry weight, and Republicans decided it was time those words came with consequences. They argue that Democrats have played by a double standard, shielding their own members while holding conservatives to a far harsher standard. When Omar faced criticism, Democrats labeled it racism and Islamophobia. But when Representatives Gosar or Green were removed from committees, it was framed as accountability. That, Chip Roy emphasized, is the core of the issue: consistency. If Congress sets a rule, It must apply to everyone, regardless of party. You can't demand fairness only when it serves your side. For Roy and many Republicans, this vote wasn't about revenge. It was about restoring balance and integrity to Congress, ensuring that the same standard apply to all who serve the American people.
Ball going forward and set those rules. And I would say the same thing about open rules, closed rules, structured rules. And the ranking member could scoff. We've had X number of votes. We'll have continued debate about this stuff over time. There will be closed rules. There will be structured rules. There will be open rules. I'd like to have that debate. I'd like to have the considered judgment of the ranking member on that, and as I have debate on my side of the aisle. I'm just saying that we can figure out how to protect this institution and try to decide how to do things the right way. But in this instance, I'm going to be very open and honest about why I'm going to vote for this resolution. That's why. Again, recognizing the statements that the representative has made, I find to be highly problematic, extremely concerning, raising very serious questions from a foreign affairs perspective, as the ranking member has raised about statements made and how he feels about people being on certain committees over here.
Gentlemen,
I think we should, in my opinion, we should withdraw from that battle going forward and then let each manager pick their team. And I'll be glad to yield to the gentleman from Colorado.
And I would simply say I appreciate Mr. Roy's honesty. I mean, again, kind of similar to what Mr. Massey said previously, and not to belabor.
This moment marks a turning point in how conservatives respond to political attacks. For years, they've tried to take the high road, absorbing blows while sticking to principles of fairness. But now, voices like Chip Roy are signaling a new approach. Republicans are ready to fight back, using the very rules Democrats established. It's more than political theater. It's a shift in power and tone inside Congress. Omar's removal wasn't just a symbolic act. It was a statement. A warning that accountability now cuts both ways, no matter your party or background. For Roy, this wasn't about personal vendettas or partisanship. It was about defending America's credibility and restoring moral strength to its institutions. This movement, as Roy embodies it, is about putting the nation first, above politics, above identity, above excuses. Omar may be off the Foreign Affairs Committee, but the larger struggle is only beginning. It's a battle for truth, fairness, and real leadership in Washington, and the message is unmistakable. Conservatives are done playing defense. The fight for America's future has begun, and this time they intend to win.
If it doesn't provide due process, why,
So,
as you said, it's partisan. It's not. And again, I appreciate the honesty on that front, and obviously the past presidents that you cited and the rest. But
I don't want to interrupt.
No.
Yeah, I would just say, agreeing with the gentleman from Kentucky, putting something in the whereas clauses, outlining I think, genuine statement by the speaker on our side or whatever, saying that would be taken into consideration and viewed is something. It is something. It is not, I will be very clear, due process in the way we mean it in court. This is not a court. This is not due process in that sense. The question here is what we're going to do as members to afford each other the opportunity to speak, be heard. I'm much more in the favor of let each other speak and be heard. Go go use your First Amendment rights to go say why you think that person said something crazy or disagreeable. I would prefer to be in that space. I have no problem with that language being in the whereas clauses. I'm not going to go trumpet it as some grand, amount of due process. It's something. It's something in there, and I'd hang my hat on it and say, yeah, go argue the ethics and make the claim. But that's not what this is about. I mean, let's just be clear. Ryan flunked Ventura for a reason. And I yield back.
After the vote, Chip Roy faced the press with calm confidence and a message rooted in principle rather than politics. He made it clear this wasn't about scoring points or pleasing a partisan crowd. It was about protecting America's dignity. Roy argued that every time a representative minimizes national pain or insults U.S. allies, the world sees weakness. If we can't respect our own tragedies, he said, how can we expect others to respect us? That statement struck a chord with many Americans who are exhausted by leaders turning public service into performance. Roy's message was simple but powerful. Representing the nation is a privilege, one that demands honor, not entitlement. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar doubled down on her defense, claiming she was punished for being outspoken and that her removal reflected ongoing discrimination against Muslim women in positions of power. Her supporters echoed that sentiment online, framing her as a voice for the voiceless. But critics pushed back hard, insisting this was not about faith. It was about conduct. They pointed out that other Muslim lawmakers have never faced such controversies because they haven't made divisive or inflammatory remarks. The issue, they argued, was rhetoric, not religion. As the story spread, public reaction split sharply down political lines. Progressives condemned the move as political retribution, while conservatives celebrated it as long overdue accountability. Yet beneath the noise, one uncomfortable question lingered. Has Congress lost its moral compass? The vote exposed a deeper rot. Both parties now weaponize moral outrage, more focused on who gets offended first than on solving real problems. Roy's speech served as a quiet but powerful rebuke to that culture. He didn't gloat over Omar's removal. Instead, he used it to remind America that actions have consequences for everyone, regardless of party or background. What made Roy's stand resonate was his tone, firm but never hateful. He wasn't chasing viral clips or political applause. He spoke for ordinary Americans who feel ignored, citizens tired of watching leaders play the victim instead of taking responsibility. Roy summed it up best when he said, "Public service isn't a shield, it's a mirror." That line captured the essence of his message. Leadership reflects the values of those it represents. And when that reflection turns ugly, it's Congress's duty to correct in a time when shouting often replaces substance. Chip Roy's calm conviction cut to the partisan fog, reminding everyone that true strength isn't loud. It's principled. Ilhan Omar spoke emotionally about escaping conflict, growing up in poverty, and eventually finding her place in America, a story that has inspired many who see her as living proof that the American dream still exists. Her journey is undeniably powerful. But for Chip Roy and his allies, inspiration doesn't erase accountability. As Roy put it, personal history can explain a perspective, but it cannot excuse one's words. In Congress, every statement has global impact, and for him, that's a responsibility no one should take lightly, regardless of their background. The media, as always, shaped the narrative. Some outlets cast Omar as the victim of right-wing aggression, while others painted her as the face of reckless activism. But lost in the noise was the real issue, not race, not party, but conduct. When lawmakers start acting like celebrities instead of public servants, public trust erodes. Roy's steady tone cut through the partisanship. Congress, he reminded everyone, isn't a stage, it's a solemn duty. His words weren't flashy, but they resonated because they reflected something Americans rarely hear from politicians anymore. Honesty. That Omar's removal also reignited an old debate about double standards in Washington. Republicans questioned why inflammatory remarks from conservatives were punished swiftly, while Democrats often faced softer scrutiny. Roy seized a moment to highlight that imbalance. If fairness doesn't apply equally, he said, then it isn't fairness at all. That simple truth echoed the frustration of millions of Americans who are weary of selective outrage, where accountability seems to depend on party labels instead of principle. For Roy, this wasn't just about one congresswoman. It was about rebuilding fairness in a system that's forgotten what that word means. Analysts later called the vote one of the most consequential moments of the congressional session. Not because of who lost a seat, but because of what it symbolized. It signaled a shift in tone on Capitol Hill, a reminder that words have weight and that leadership requires responsibility. That Roy's calm, disciplined approach showed that accountability doesn't have to come with cruelty. He didn't mock, he didn't gloat, he simply drew a line. And in an era where outrage too often drowns out integrity, that restraint felt like a breath of fresh air. Outside the Capitol, public reactions were fierce. Supporters hailed the decision as long overdue accountability. Critics called it an attack on dissent. Yet amid the division, one truth stood out. This moment exposed how broken political dialogue has become. People no longer listen to understand. They listen to respond. Chip Roy's stand, though controversial, brought the conversation back to something fundamental. Leadership must be earned through integrity. In a world of slogans and spin, his call for decency stood out precisely because it was rare, BY weeks, and The headlines began to fade, but the message endured. Ilhan Omar's removal wasn't just political, it was cultural. It sent a message that America expects more from its representatives than theatrics or victimhood. That identity cannot serve as a shield against accountability. And that leadership carries consequences. Chip Roy may have sparked outrage, but he also sparked reflection. His insistence on truth and fairness rekindled a value many feared was lost in Washington. The belief that honor still matters. The debate may be over, but the standard he set will echo long after the noise dies down.